Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. It is July 19th, 2020. It is just about 5:30 in the morning, and I'm recording at this time because today's episode is about parenting. Now, I can only speak from my perspective. I have one kid, and he has two parents. My wife's in medical school. I'm working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Medical school is not your typical, I had 15 hours of class when I went to school, probably like 3 hours a day, Monday to Friday, if that, maybe one full day or something like that, and another day off. Medical school is actually going to work in a hospital at this point in her the stage of the schooling. So it's you're working on hospital schedule. So currently, right now, she is on day 3 of working day shift. But that just happened to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday this time around, just because they have to schedule people, and hospitals don't close on the weekends. So on Sunday morning, normally I would have free reign to record a couple of podcasts without interruption, but that's not how it's working today. And that's just one example of what happens when there's kids involved, because I can't do something uninterrupted when Henry is awake. I can try. And if his parents listening, they know what I mean. You can try to do things with a baby, and you will very likely get things done. There will be times when you can get a lot done. And for example, yesterday, he slept for 3 hours, which normally he does not do. Even at daycare, we're getting the reports now where he'll sleep for 2 hours, which is wow, with a bunch of other kids there. And it's not like they go quiet the whole time or anything. So, yeah. But did I plan to do anything during those 3 hours? No, because he could wake up at any time. So he's sleeping right now. Normally, he doesn't wake up until 6 at the earliest. Hopefully closer to 6:30. We like 7. 7's always better. But the point is, with kids, you don't know. And also, kids change all the time. So like I said, I can only speak from my perspective. I don't want to speak for people with 2 kids, older kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, people who are single parents. I'm not going to even imagine that I know what that's like. But I'll tell you what my experience is. And like I said, my experience is you can't plan for anything anymore. That's probably the biggest difference, right? You can't say, okay, let's meet at 11, and it's definitely going to be uninterrupted time for an hour. We're trying that later today, though. We're going to do the Dear Ruby podcast. We have a special guest as well who is a parent, so it's very appropriate. We're going to meet at 11:30 and hope that everybody's napping, but the whole experience of recording it with the kids in the picture and having responsibilities is that at any moment during the recording, even in this one, I could have to go and get the kid. Now, of course, if he just starts crying a little bit, I'm going to watch it and to make sure he's okay. And most of the time, if it's 5 or less than 10 minutes, he's just having a thing, and then he goes back down to bed, right? There's nothing really wrong. This is what babies do, right? So currently Henry is almost 18 months old. And he is a really good sleeper. So we're very lucky that way. But sometimes he gets up a little earlier, but he doesn't wake us up in the middle of the night. So we're very lucky that way. So what's changed in terms of podcasting is I used to drive and meet people at their house. I used to just be able to podcast whenever I want, take time editing. I'm in essence, I used to be able to do whatever I wanted, especially in my free time. But my free time is not my time anymore. it's we made this decision to bring a child into the world, and he's amazing. He's awesome. But the thing that you have to realize, and the major thing, is that you don't have the ability to do things freely anymore. It's not the way that it works unless one parent fully takes on the responsibility. And so I'm going to talk about how it's been working in COVID. So pre-COVID, here's what happened. Right, Henry was born in February of 2019, and I just happened to be off of work. It wasn't, it's not like I quit my job because we were having a baby. I quit my job to explore other things, and because I had some money and I could afford it. And there's a lot of privilege there, but acknowledging privilege while also acknowledging that I went through a consumer proposal and insolvency in order to take care of my gambling debt and my gambling addiction. Again, that is a privilege too. I tell people this every day, that in Canada, the ability to file insolvency and do it in such an automatic way is not something that exists everywhere in every country. So, I did that. I was able to save up a lot of money over 10 years, and some of it I was able to use to live on. And so when I decided, hey, I'm not really feeling it at this job, I want to try something else. I don't know what it is, but it's not this. I think that's the title of a book, actually. I don't know what I want to do, but it's not this. I should probably look for that and post that in the show notes. But I was able to actually take time, and I made a little bit of money on the side, so I didn't have to use all of the money that I saved. And then in the meantime, Kayla was pregnant, and so we had our first baby, and she had to take a break from medical school as well. So we were in a situation where neither one of us had steady income, and we're having a baby. So this is just to show you that it's really hard to plan having a baby. It would have been great. Let's do it when you can take maternity leave and get maternity EI benefits, and when I also would have a job, but neither one of us had the ability to get paid. So we just basically continued to live off of the savings that I built up. But also in the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, at some point I'm going to figure out what it is I want to do. And I looked into being an insolvency counselor under the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. I talked to Doug Hoyes about it, and we figured something out, right? He's like, well, you got to take the courses and you got to do all this stuff. I'm going to post a link to the podcast on his show, the episode where we talk about this whole thing that I went through. So that was in March, just before the pandemic. That was that was aired, that one. But I decided to do that. And in the meantime, Kayla was off of school, so she was able to take most of the responsibility of the primary responsibility of the baby. But since I had a very flexible schedule, we were able to do a lot of co-parenting, so she didn't go crazy. And I also got to learn how to be a parent and what it's like to have a baby. And then when she went back to school in October, I took over. I sort of felt ready. Not really, but we did some trials where I did have the baby by myself here and there. But in October, she went back full on into surgery at the hospital, which it was 12-hour shifts and some 24-hour rotations, things like that. So, I would actually take the baby to the hospital for either for breastfeeding or for to just visit her, so that he wouldn't forget her. All right, sometimes. So that was October through December. I was basically, for all intents and purposes, a single dad at times. Even though she would be home, she would not have a lot of time, and sometimes she would be home after he would go to bed. So we had to operate as if, I couldn't rely on her to do anything except for the only thing that she could do at the time, or she had to do, is breastfeed or pump, so that he could continue to drink breast milk. Otherwise I had to figure out how to do everything else myself. So that was an interesting experience for me to figure that all out. And then by January, we got full-time daycare, and we got that because we applied in August. Uh, so just heads up, parents, everything they say about applying early, like apply even earlier. As I'm going to also reference the most recent Debt Free in 30 podcast episode, which is with Julie Wildman, who's a licensed insolvency trustee in our firm. And she has a couple of kids, and she's been off. So she talks about maternity benefits and what it's the cost of having a kid and what that's like. And the term that she used, which I like, was as soon as the stick turns pink, you got to start making plans, financial plans, or whatever it is, right? So what happened was we got that daycare, and I had been training at Hoy's in September, and then Doug was good enough to write up a contract that said, hey, we know we're kind of in the power of the daycare system, so I can't force you to start, in October, because obviously I'm a stay-at-home dad for that time. So it was like whenever daycare comes, and we thought it'd be November 1st. We were a little bit naive, I guess, about that, or hopeful. I guess that's probably a better term. But what happened was, we couldn't get the full-time spot, and we got a couple of part-time days in December, but one full-time spot opened up in January. So I thought I would have to start part-time. But I started full-time January, and then I'm like, we're set, right? I can do this full-time job. I'm making money again. We have to pay for daycare, which we were paying for, and then it turns out we got a subsidy from the city of Hamilton because we applied for that in August as well. And the thing about taking some time off of work is that you don't make any money. And being a student, you don't make any money either. So on paper, on the tax return, we are very, very, very low income. So we qualified for full subsidy for daycare, which is awesome. And this is what it's for, right? There are times in your life when you can take a break, or when you might have to take a break, like being a student. And no student should have to pay $27,000 for tuition every year from medical school, which I think is low, actually. And in Canada, and then if you had to do international school, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And also have your cost of living with no income, and no time to work because, like I just told you about medical school, and like she's working on weekends right now. So there's no time to make money during medical school, and it costs more. And so throw daycare on top of that, that's not fair. So it makes sense that a student and someone who is not actually working and making money should qualify for a subsidy. And we paid lots of taxes over the years, and so this all makes sense. This is how it should work, right? If I was directly taking it away, this subsidy from somebody else, then fine, we could have that negotiation. But I'm sure we're going to be able to pay back into the system, or if we haven't already paid into it, more than we're taking from it. And since I'm making money this year, obviously our subsidy is going to go down, and it'll just keep going down until we don't have a subsidy anymore. And that's how subsidies should work. What bothers me is that I talk to people all the time who should be in the system and be subsidized, and they're not. And so we need to talk about subsidies so much more. Like, if you can get free daycare or reduced cost daycare, you should be applying for this. The fact that only the people that don't necessarily need, if you want to call them rebates or discounts, are the ones that get it. It's like you get a free meal if you spend a lot of money somewhere, that kind of thing. It shouldn't be just people who can afford things or know how to work the system who get the free things. So those of us who do know how the system works need to talk about it more and tell people. An example of that is the RDSP, the Registered Disability Savings Plan. So many people are getting the disability tax credit, and because they're technically and on paper disabled, because you have to fill out a form, and the doctor has to say that your life has been significantly affected by the disability that you're stating on the page. So it's not like it's really straightforward, especially if it's more mental than physical. So this has to be something that you qualify for. But once you do qualify for the disability tax credit, you qualify for the registered disability savings plan. And this has an amazing matching. Like an example is you put in $1,500 in a year, and you're going to get $3,500 from the government. So you put in 15 and you get 5,000. Just that's it. And so it's a fantastic incentive for people who are disabled to be able to save by not putting in that much. And you can get, I think it's like 70,000 over time. If you start when you're younger and it goes till 49, you can get that 3,500 free from the government for 20 years. And so you can get $70,000 in, call it grants or matches in the government. And this is a huge bonus. And nobody talks about this. I mean, maybe they do. I just don't hear it. I don't see it posted all the time. I think the Big Cajun Man, who is another personal finance blogger, and I'll try to post a link for that in the show notes as well if I can find it. I believe his son gets a disability tax credit, so he talks about that a bit, and so I will post that. But it should be in like on everybody's top of mind, just like what TFSA, RESP, RRSP, RDSP should be in the mix when we talk about this, because it affects a lot of Canadians. So let's keep talking about that stuff. So now I have no idea how I got onto that or where I came from, but I think it has to do with subsidies. There we go. See how I came back to that, and it didn't take very long. I just had to think. So subsidies are important to look into. So we were lucky. We got daycare subsidy in February. This is 2020, so we're close to in real time right now. It's not like I'm talking about years ago, right? The baby's only 18 months old. So we got subsidy, and that was great. It's not retroactive. We still had to have the money to pay for daycare. That's the thing, right? You can't sign up for something just hoping you're going to get the subsidy and what? I don't know what people would do. Put it on the credit card? That sounds terrible. So don't do that. So that's probably why a lot of people don't get daycare, because it is expensive. It costs us about $1,200 a month to set it all up, give or take, however many days there are, and how many hours in the day that you need the baby and in daycare, and what area you live in. It's more expensive in Toronto. Hamilton is a little bit less. It's probably not so bad in the rural community if it's just, you find somebody who you trust and can watch the baby. Maybe you could even get daycare for free or close to free, I guess, if you have family or anybody who's close. And that's what I know a few people who do that, and that's that's a very fortunate thing to be able to do, and it's not so different from the subsidy that we have, in that I just drive the baby up to the mountain. We're in the valley part of Hamilton, so I drive him up to the top of the mountain, which he seems to enjoy, going up the mountain every day now. And leave them with really qualified people. And we picked this daycare because we met the owner at a meditation retreat when we went. When we were, again, another thing that we can't do, especially together. We haven't been away for a weekend together on any kind of retreat in a while. So to bring it back to some of the things that you just can't do. Now somebody could watch the baby, but then that brings us to the COVID situation. So we're in COVID now, and where we were, we might have been able to say, let's talk to our next door neighbor again to see if she can watch the baby sometimes. Maybe we can have a dinner, a night out. And because we were looking into that, and she's retired, and she's really interested in just taking Henry for a night here and there, because that's what she likes, Henry, right? And she's willing to do that. Okay, we'll consider that, right? Because that might be nice, and she's right next door, so it's no big deal. Well, now all of those things are out the window. It's not it's not just that simple, right? Oh, let's call Lynn up and say, okay, let's do that, and we'll try Henry out in her house so that maybe we can just drop him off there, or maybe she can come to our house. Well, now there's this whole thing about contaminating everyone, right? We don't want to infect somebody we don't know what their bubble is. They don't know what our bubble is of people. Um, it's happening in Texas right now, where apparently 4 to 5 people are exposed because nobody's bubbling, or they don't, they're trying in small groups, but then those small groups go hang out with other small groups. So we're seeing a lot of examples in the U.S. right now of how easily it can spread when you just basically flaunt social distancing and decide that the virus, you're done with it. So we were thinking about all this stuff in the last 4 months as we were going along. And so the options that we had before for daycare are very limited. Even grandparents, it's not safe. Now that Kayla's back in the hospital, of course, she's not working with COVID patients or anything like that, and we actually have no active cases in Hamilton, so it's in the hospital, so it's actually relatively safe. Doesn't mean we're not taking all the precautions that we should be taking, but the risk is lower than if she was in a hospital every day that was packed with people on ventilators, whether she was working with them or not. So it's a bit of a different situation with kids in COVID, and again, I'm not going to say that I know what it's like with multiple kids, but just with my kid, the way that it went down was they let all of the clinical medical students out of the hospital in the middle of March, and basically the same day that Henry got sent home from daycare. So the hospitals in Hamilton, and I believe across Canada, made the decision that they wouldn't keep medical students on unless it was necessary, and so they deemed it wasn't necessary, and it was putting them at risk, and they're not getting paid, and so they just made that call. They could have probably decided to keep them on if they needed the extra labor, because they would definitely have learned a lot being in the situation, but also put them at risk. And then what? Then we don't have any future doctors, right? So somebody made that call, and Kayla got sent home. And then probably a month later, she started up online medical school, which was not a walk in the park. It was something that she was able to do while still looking after Henry during the day while I was doing my work. And the thing about my job is that I'm meeting with people in individual counseling sessions all day. So it's not a flexible thing where I can okay, I'll take the baby, then you take the baby. I have to be there all day, 9 to 5. And so that wasn't great, but Kayla was able to make it work. I'm not going to say that it wasn't frustrating at times for her, but I appreciate that she was able to be a little more flexible than I was. And then I was able to maintain the paycheck that we're needing during this time. And a lot of parents have been going through this kind of stuff. A lot of parents do have, as I used to, project-based work, nothing that is like meetings all day, which are scheduled and important for you to not have anybody or baby in your arms while you're helping someone. But if it was just I used to work on reports and spreadsheets. That's something that I could have been, sort of scheduling around. Okay, I'll take the baby for an hour, and then I'll work for an hour, and then we can sort of split up the day. So a lot of parents have that. Also, a lot of parents aren't in meetings, so they could just have the baby there, either in their arms, or if they have older kids, the kids can just be in the room playing. I know even now, Henry can be in the room playing on the floor, and I can do things. But at any moment, he might need something, or he might scream, or he might just be hungry, and there's so many things that can interrupt. Just right now, he's rolling around. It's closer to 6, and he's rolling around, and he could wake up at any time. And he might, if he's just a little bit grumbly, I'll leave him be. But if he's yelling out, I'm gonna have to go grab him so that it doesn't bother his mom, who is sleeping right now, and she needs to sleep because she has to go and see patients today. And as much as she's a medical student, she is assigned 6, 7, 8, 9 patients to see in the day during her time in internal medicine. And it's important that she is alert. Medical students, they at this stage they get a lot of responsibility, and they're working on a team. And this team of doctors and residents, they rely on the students to be competent and rested as much as they can be. So it's not like you just got to go and study for a couple of hours, right? Not to diminish my schooling or anybody else who is in a university program where you study for an exam and then you take an exam. This is not even close to the same. I don't even, this is closer if you were to compare it to something like a co-op program where you go and work and get credit for that, and maybe you get a stipend for that. That's the closest thing. But really, this is a very unique thing where you're going and you're working directly with patients. This is not something that it can be compared to a regular university. So that's is always taken priority. This is a very important part of our life that Kayla is able to dedicate her time to completing medical school. And these are the decisions that we have to make, right? So she's doing that, and she did the online part, and then they were starting to say, okay, July 6th, or the beginning of July, is when we're going to go back in the clinical setting. Everyone's taken some time to. Well, first of all, we got through the first bit of the wave and made sure that everybody was all set up in hospitals for if there was any COVID outbreaks, so they felt more ready, and they were able to come up with the rules for personal protective equipment, PPE, and for distancing and how the whole procedure would work. And in this case, it's she works some days and then some nights, and then has a couple of days off in the middle. So that it's kind of nice for her to be able to just have some days off in there. But the whole thing is, if Henry wasn't going back to daycare, this is impossible. So the two options were, if daycare's not ready, or we don't feel that daycare is a good place, or if daycare is not even available to us. Like you can't have as many kids in daycare now as you did before. Everything is different. Before, when he was in daycare, I thought, okay, we're all set, right? He's in daycare. I got my time to work. I can make money. He's in daycare. Kayla's in school. All good. But in the first week or two, he was sick, and he had a temperature, and they wouldn't take him. And I'm thinking, well, what is daycare for, if not to take my son and when he's sick and take care of him? But there's other kids to worry about, and this is before COVID. So I'm staying home now. I have to reschedule the appointments that I have. I'm taking a sick day, which are limited, and not limited that much, but it's like there's only a certain amount in a year before you have to take unpaid days or take your vacation days. Just how it works in most companies. And so I realized right then that, well, this is still unpredictable. It's not something I can count on. So right now, as I'm waiting for him to wake up, and I don't know how long I'm going to be able to continue to ramble like this, and thank you for whoever's still listening. The work situation is, I don't know if I'm going to have to take a day off tomorrow. And then it happened a couple of weeks later in January, I believe, a water main broke in the daycare. That wasn't even a sick thing. I got there, and she's like, we have no water. You have to go home. I'm like, all right, great. So I don't know. That was just, I was a bit down about all that, because this is not something that I anticipated, that I would be at the whim of sickness or incidents But the water main thing, of course, that happens. It just happens. Like, who's going to predict that, right? And I guess Henry's going to have a temperature, and there's nobody else that can take care of him but me. Now, Kayla could have at some points. It's much, much harder to reschedule a day of medical school because in this 3-year program, every day is precious. So she could have done it if if I was like taking so many sick days. So we would have got to that point. We never had to get there, which is good because by February, I think I had one more maybe, and then it like kind of leveled out. And then everything shut down in the middle of March. So he was out of daycare. But they kind of, it's almost like they timed this perfectly. I don't think they could have. But, if they're going to send people back to work and back into school, then daycare opening makes sense. And we got our spot back. Not that spot because he was an infant and now he's a toddler, which is nice. So they didn't have the infant program open up yet. But on the same day Kayla went back to the hospital, he went back into daycare, and it's a bit different. We have to wear masks and drop him off at the front, and he gets a temperature gun pointed at his head every day, and there's less kids, and it's the same people all the time, and you just got to hope that everyone's taken care. So far, so good. It's been 2 weeks now. But who knows? That's the thing about COVID. Who knows? Nobody knows anything. We're learning things constantly all the time. It's airborne now, or that's what the CDC is saying, right? So it's what? Does that mean I'm walking into any place and it could be a big cloud of COVID waiting for me? If so, that makes sense that we should all wear masks indoors. Sure, right? So then I think that just passed yesterday. All indoor places in Hamilton, you got to wear a mask, and that's fine. I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with masks. I have a problem with getting COVID and having lung damage for the rest of my life, if not dying. As everyone likes to say, who is apparently anti-mask and anti-fact in reality, is that, you're not likely to die. It's just old people or whatever. I'm like, okay, fine. Even if that's true. First of all, why are you okay with people dying? Why are you okay with old people dying only? Like they're somehow expendable and not people with the most wisdom and experience to share. Why do people act like old people are expendable? I just don't understand that. Maybe I'm more sensitive as I'm getting older to that. But it's not true. Old people are valuable as anyone else. And people with disabilities are valuable too. Like, I just don't, I really don't like this argument that, only old people and compromised people are at risk. They're people. These are people who live in our lives and all the time. And a lot of people are compromised that you don't even realize. Invisible disabilities exist all over the place. But the thing is, dying is not the only thing that happens with COVID. They're finding things every day. Every day they're finding new things. A really interesting quote I think Dr. Fauci in the U.S. put up is that, we know a lot about how diseases and viruses and that kind of thing work because we've had lots of time to study them. And asbestos is a good example. We didn't know it hurt people, and then we found out later it did because it built up over time. We have no runway at all for this coronavirus. For COVID-19, we have very, very little time to see the effects of it. So somebody has it, and then they're good, and then apparently 6 weeks later it comes back, and they're feeling terrible again. And then some people have this really bad respiratory damage, and some people don't. And so it's like basically this whole thing of Russian roulette, right? If you are okay with getting COVID because you think you're going to be fine and you're not going to die and you'll be able to survive and you're strong, fine, you might be, but you also might not be. Maybe there's a very low likelihood you're going to die, but you're going to probably have something, right? If you don't have any any results, any side effects after going through this, I feel like you're definitely one of the lucky ones. But that happens with anything. You can go through a lot of things and you don't have any ill effects from it, but that's usually rare. So the whole thing is, you don't want to get this thing to find out. Why is this rhetoric being passed around in the world about let's just get it and get it done with? It's really a concept based on misunderstanding, and this whole idea of being cautious is being put forth by people as bad. Like caution is bad. Taking a bit of a conservative approach is somehow bad in this case because you're playing it too safe. Right? We gotta reopen the economy. It's fine. Like you can make tons of arguments about this, but I guess we're gonna just see how it goes. We want to balance the reopening and the being cautious, and I feel like we're doing pretty okay in Ontario. I think a good time to reopen is when you have 0 active cases. That's pretty great, right? Doesn't mean there aren't cases floating around in people's houses and things like that, and that people don't have it. But hey, if you're going to pick a time, 0 active cases sounds good. How about not, 1,000 people dying a day like in the U.S.? So, like, what makes more sense? It just a lot of this just seems just really common sense stuff to me. But I have always been on the side of a little more anxiety towards, taking this kind of risk. I stopped taking risks a long time ago when I stopped gambling. And it's very important to me to not take unnecessary risks because of how they got me into trouble in the past. So I'm pretty comfortable with staying at home as long as I need to. So the kids in daycare, and it's a little bit more normal now. It's actually a bit weird to be able to just sort of do whatever I want on my lunch, have lunch, or sit, maybe even do something that I planned, because there's no one that is going to interrupt me. It's a bit of a foreign concept, of course, as I keep saying. People with more than one child can probably relate to this even a lot more. To have time to yourself is odd, and to have time where you can basically do whatever you want. Like even right now, even though he's sleeping, I can't leave the house. Right? It's not like I can go and go drive Uber right now as I used to do. I can't do that kind of stuff, right? I can sort of feel free, like he's not going to wake up, or he could wake up at any moment now because it's past 6 o'clock. But you don't have that freedom anymore. When he goes to sleep tonight, I am free, very likely, to do whatever I like. But I'm looking at the monitor and I'm making sure that he's okay. And I can't leave the house. So if Kayla's doing a 24-hour shift, I can't make plans like that. Now, I'm not leaving the house during COVID anyway, so it's not a big deal. But it's just to remind you listening that these are the limits of caring for another person. And during COVID, it's a little bit different. Of course, daycare doesn't exist on the weekends. So if you don't have it exists, but not in this kind of situation. And on top of that, we're not in a position where we can have daycare and aftercare and somebody that looks from the weekend. That's too much risk, I think. I think having him in one cohort of people, 6 kids or however many it is, I think it's 6. They don't let me inside, so I'd have to read the papers again. I never get to see the kids. But a couple of teachers, a couple of early childhood educators, they that seems okay to me. It's kind of what I have to do right now. I don't have much of a choice. The alternative would be to take off work. And if I don't have to do that, I won't. In balancing the safety with the responsibility and the desire to have income at this point. Because, I can take time off work, but not for a long period of time. And also, I thought about, should I just wait until Henry's a bit older and then start work then? But the opportunity might not be around then. And the opportunity to do this kind of valuable work, being an insolvency counselor, it came up and I can fit it in. And this is what we're doing now. And this is how being a parent is for me during COVID. So even though he's in daycare and we have I have my lunch back and I have my sort of days. If Kayla's working, if Kayla's in the hospital, I'm taking him to daycare. I'm picking him up. I'm doing all the things before and after work, and then on the weekends like today and yesterday, where Kayla's on shift in the hospital, that's all me. So I get to be the stay-at-home dad again and get that experience, which I think everyone should, right? As much as you can, try to share the parenting. It's not something that should always fall on the mother, even though there are, like I said, there are specific things that the mother has to do, like breastfeeding, and there are just things that mothers are generally more equipped, either physically or just better at, or there's a lot of instincts there. But I felt like I could learn these things, even though I didn't carry the child, and I didn't feel the connection that the mother feels. It's something that you can build, and also that you should try, because it's important. There's two parents. When there's two parents, the two parents should be involved. I see so many people, in my work, that are single parents, and life costs too much to be a single parent. It just there's not enough money coming in to be able to take care of a child and to work by yourself. It's I don't know. I think society is built that way, that they assume there's two parents, so there's support should be coming in, and a lot of people don't get the support, and that's really frustrating too. So a shout out to single parents out there. It's a tough world, especially if you have more than one or more than two. It's not easy. It's not easy for any parents. This is just a bit of a taste of my personal experience, and there's a whole lot of privilege in there that I have. So take away my privilege and apply that, and then take away a parent, and you're dealing with a really tough situation. Every day is a grind for single parents, or they have to just really have a good network of people. But I'm gonna in the future definitely have some more single parents on and talk about that. Now that parenting is more of a thing for me, I can relate a little bit anyway. I can understand, try to understand. So baby's not up yet, but I think we're good. I think we're good for today. I just wanted to give you a taste today of my experience and a few of the things that you go through when you decide to bring another life into the world. For anyone listening who's deciding on that, or maybe you've done that and you can relate. So yeah, definitely check out the most recent episode, I guess. I think it was in February or March, of the Because Money podcast. Because Money is Sandy Martin and John Robertson and Chris Enns. This episode anyway. I think Kate Smalley is in it at times too, and other people that I can't remember. But they have a Welcome to Parenthood episode. I'll put a link to that. That's a good one. The one I mentioned about maternity benefits and just the costs of having kids and what it's like, with Julie Wildman, one of our licensed insolvency trustees, who also happens to be Ted and Michaelos' sister, and also a super qualified and intelligent person, and fantastic. She's making cakes as a hobby. I see it on Twitter. It's like, so you have like 700 credentials at the end of your name, and you can make fantastic cakes and have two kids. Like a super person here. So yeah, Julie's a very good guest to listen to. I really enjoyed the episode yesterday that I listened to, and I think it just came out yesterday. So, and then there's a bunch of other episodes about parenting. Listen to the Dear Ruby podcast, where I believe going to have Shannon Lee Simmons on with us today. So if you're listening to this, look for Dear Ruby. I'll post a link, but if you go and check out my social media, you'll probably see it, or my co-host Rubina Ahmed Haq. Check out her stuff too. So until next week, where again, this is a week-by-week thing. I don't know who the guest is. It could be me again, but I think I'm going to have a guest next week. I don't know who it is quite yet, but we'll find out, and we'll just keep talking about life and what it's like in COVID and with money and other things, and I'll see you then.